your host, Mimosa.
And co-host, Kareem.
Welcome to Sometimes We're Boujee and Sometimes We Hood. To healing, navigating grief. It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Sometimes We're Boujee,
Sometimes We're Hood.
A podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance. I'm your host, Mimosa, Auntie Mimosa.
Yeah, it's cousin Kareem. How y'all doing?
And whether you're in the depths of grief, slowly learning to live with loss, or supporting someone on their journey, this space is for you. Grief is deeply personal. There's no timeline, no rule book, no right way, no wrong way to navigate it. But through shared experiences, honest conversations, and moments of reflection, we can find comfort, understanding, and hope. Each episode will dive into the emotions that come with loss, like anger, sadness, guilt, acceptance, and talk with experts, survivors, and those who have walked this path. You're not alone in your grief, and together we will move forward to honoring the past while embracing the present. In this episode, we'll talk about why grief so often brings a sense of responsibility, what parts we carry with compassion, and how to put down the burdens that were never ours to begin with.
Wow. That's a strong one right there.
Yes. So when loss happens, support can feel like a lifeline or sometimes like something that's missing. And we'll explore what real support looks like, how to ask for it, and how to offer it to others. When someone we love transitions, it's not just sadness that we feel, it's questions, it's doubt, guilt, obligations, and a huge weight we sometimes put on ourselves, and sometimes even a weight is lifted. So, whether you're grieving, walking beside someone who is, or just trying to better understand how to show up, this episode is for you. So, take a deep breath, find a quiet space, and let's begin this journey towards healing one conversation at a time. So let's talk, let's heal, let's remember together. All right, cousin Kareem.
Got those unanswered questions too.
Yes.
Yeah, we got those unanswered things too, the questions or situations that we'll never get an answer to. About especially with responsibility. It's like, why didn't you this? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you? It's like the person's not here anymore to give those responses. So here you are trying to, juggle, trying not to be mad at them, and at the same time trying to be responsible and do all the stuff for the stuff that was left behind.
Right.
And I tell you, that's some deep stuff. But anyway, go ahead, cuz. Go ahead.
So I want to say welcome, joining everyone that's joining in across all the platforms. If you don't know, we stream live on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. So I just want to take a quick moment to kind of take a step back so everyone can understand like why grief feels responsible, and review the 7 stages of grief. Now, most people say, oh, it's only 5. Actually, according to Kubler-Ross and Kessler, they've identified actually seven stages of grief. And the first one, of course, is shock and belief. And that's the initial stage of grief when individuals find out about, the transition of a loved one. Also, with shock and disbelief, there's a feeling of numbness, uh, dazed, okay, disbelief. The second stage is denial,
Mm.
and it's individuals, they don't want to realize the reality or accept the reality of the situation. They try to block it out, the emotions that come with excuse me, that come with that particular loss. Then the next is bargaining. And with bargaining, that's the individual trying to negotiate with a higher power, or God, whichever God you serve, asking for the loss to be reversed or for a different outcome. Then there's anger. Okay. And with anger, of course, individual or person, you feel angry with themselves, they angry for the loss, they lash out in order to cope with that pain. Then, of course, depression. And we all know what depression is. That's that overwhelming feeling of sadness, emptiness, loss of interest, and, a loss of wanting to participate in activities and different things. And then testing. So, testing, and these are the two newest ones, okay? Testing is a new one, which is the individual may start to experiment with new ways of being. Um, they may begin to seek new connections and activities. Now, I say testing, they say testing, I say reinventing, because depending on, and I always say this, depending on the degree of loss, how close that person is to you with that loss, is how you have to reinvent yourself after. And then the last stage is acceptance. That's the final stage of grief, where individual actually comes to the terms with the loss and begins to move forward with their life. With that being said, I will also say that it's important to know that these stages do not come in any particular order. Okay.
Right? Yeah. They come more than once.
They come right, exactly. There is a cycle. There is like there's a cycle. It may come in reverse. It may come forward. It may start in the middle. You may start with anger and then move to acceptance and probably go to denial and then, back and forth. So there, when I tell you there's no right, there's no wrong way when it comes to these 7 stages of grief. It's how you, the individual, deal with your grief and loss of a loved one. You know. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and dive in to the topic, today's topic, which is the weight we carry, responsibility in grief.
Mm.
What are
Yeah.
what's some of your thoughts on that, cousin Kareem?
It's I think it gets more difficult, the weight of responsibility after people
Mhm.
go on, because the after effect of it all, like I was saying earlier, is that they didn't leave you a playbook. They didn't leave you guidelines. They didn't suggestions. You just get thrown into it. Uh, my situation, taking care of 2 autistic grown adults. We got thrown into it.
Right.
Nobody else was gonna take them. They would have went into a state facility.
Mm-hmm.
So we call ourselves doing the right thing. But the disruption of our lifestyle as a family unit
Right.
was big.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized that there were things that weren't done with said
Mm.
adult, basically children, mentally wise, they're still children.
Mm-hmm.
So go figure that. So somebody like me who's not in that field, my wife is in that field,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why she was left with responsibility because she's in that field. Even though
Right.
she's transitioning out of that field,
Mm-hmm.
the person, her aunt, felt you'd be equipped to do this
Right.
for the rest of
Right.
your life. And it's like, wait a minute, I got a life.
Mm-hmm.
She has a husband, she has a kids. So where was that consideration in that level of responsibility? And so it's a daunting task to
Right.
ask young people to offset their life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, adults, we can adapt and overcome, but for young people, it's a daunting task to say, hey, you got to give up a little something because we got to do something now to help these people.
Right.
And that level of responsibility wasn't asked for from
Mm-hmm.
them. It wasn't put in front of them. They didn't sign any contract. I mean, maybe I'm making too much of it, but it's just a lot to deal with when you didn't see it coming.
Right.
And I'm not saying you didn't see it coming, but when it actually gets there, it's
Mm-hmm.
different than people say, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I know what I would do." People always say, "I know what I would do if this situation happened, whatever, whatever." And then all of a sudden, when it happens, you're like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! What are we doing now? What are we doing?" And then
Right.
that whole thing changes the dynamic of life.
It does.
It makes you sit back and say, "I didn't actually consider
Mm.
I didn't consider this. I didn't consider that." And all of a sudden, a
Mm-hmm.
checklist evolves where things you didn't consider, and
Yes.
then you're like, you want to turn to the left or the right and be like, yo, how come you didn't let me know this or that? And you realize there's never going to be an answer to that.
Right.
The
Right.
most difficult part is you're never going to get the answers. I know some people say, oh, I had a visitation and this, and but in that visitation, when you wake up or whatever, it was in a dream, you still don't get your questions answered. It's like,
Right.
because you're
Right.
talking about whatever, but possibly,
Uh-huh.
but the answers that you want, yeah, like you just have, I don't know. Yeah, that's the hardest part. What are your thoughts on what I said? Yeah, that's crazy.
So
I know
I
you got some situations.
right. So I think, and that's one of the things where, as I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go back, okay, with this comment. That is why, as adults or adult beings, bringing children into this world, one, the first thing to understand and know is that when you bring a child into this world, you are raising this individual, this little person, to be an adult. Okay. That's one.
Self-sustaining adult.
Self, right. Okay.
Yeah, we do know adults who just can't do it on their own. So
Okay.
yeah.
Two, you're raising somebody's husband or wife.
Mm.
Three, when it comes to responsibility, when it comes to the loss of a loved one, this is where the whole dynamic of conversation has to take place. I comprehend 100% that the conversation about transitioning and end of life is a difficult conversation because we always want to believe and we always want to believe that our loved ones are going to be here forever. especially when it comes to our children. Okay. And it's an expectation of society when it comes to our elders. It's like as we age, then it's the okay, let's start making plans for end of life because we know that our elders are not going to be here. They're on their way out. Okay. However, it is better to have that end of life preparation conversation earlier rather than later. Okay. That way, the responsibility or the feelings of guilt or frustration is not left on the family members to handle your end of life, any end of life, whether it's tragic, and I get it, tragic, you just don't know. However, you really want to have some things in order. Um,
Prior. Yeah.
exactly.
That's the
Something.
best reason for it, because when it's tragic, that's the best reason for it to be set up, because you don't know when. Nobody knows when that dash. They have that beginning date, 19 whatever, or for some of y'all 20, and then the
Mhm.
dash, nobody knows that last number. So it's better to be prepared than to not be prepared. And
Exactly.
that's why we're here talking about this, because a lot of people don't want to put themselves in that mental state to
Mhm.
prepare, because nobody wants to think about it. You don't want to think about leaving your kids, grandkids, spouse. Some people don't even want to leave their job. They so deep into it like that. They're like, oh man, I, what is my job going to do if I go? It's like, for real. It's like,
They
it's
will
like,
find a replacement. Just
exactly. Even if you're self-employed, if you got your own business, trust me, if your
they
business is
will
working
find
right, it will continue. It's like,
right, or your clients and customers will find someone else to go to.
yeah,
But yeah, so in that preparation, it's and then like I said, in this conversation, if you have small children, like who are the children going? Who are you trusting to leave to take care of your children? And is everybody on board with that? Even and like I said, with the tragedy, just to share experiences. So when Deej tragically left us, and he has an estate because his home, the home he lived in, house his grandmother on his father's side, left the house to him and an aunt. So of course, with his transition, now his half of the house belongs to me and my ex-husband, and the other half belongs to the aunt, my ex-husband's sister. So it's like a 50, 25, 25. And again, because of these things, like it was such a tragic loss that when we were at the funeral home, they had to bring up who was going to be in charge of the estate. And my ex-husband, he was like, oh, I'm going to be in charge of the estate. And then I had to catch myself and be like, well, wait, we didn't even have this conversation. So what are you talking about? How is it that you can say you're going to be in charge of the estate? But then I had to stop myself because I live in Georgia.
yeah,
He lived in North Carolina at the time. So it only made sense, really made sense logically for him to handle the estate because not only did he live in North Carolina, number one, number two, that the property is partly is his and his sisters. That was his mother and my ex-husband's mother and father's home that they built. So now here we are today with what to do with the property. So this is an as I say, these are aftermaths of what takes place when individuals make their transition and the type of responsibility that falls on the family. If your affairs, if your stuff, if your affairs are not in order. And of course, Deej didn't think he was going anywhere.
Right.
And it's not that he thought he was invincible, he just didn't think he was going anywhere. He was, you know, so, and thank you for joining. He didn't think he was going anywhere. So, with that, and then like with your situation, you know, you and your wife, you all, you already have your children, okay? And you're three, and now you've gained two more, but not children, so to speak, as in the age of two individuals, but you gained two adults that have the mentality of children. So now
Yeah.
there's five children that you've had to take on the responsibility of. And as you said, excuse me, as you said, with your wife, because she works in that field as an educator, she has the experience and the know-how of the caretaking part after that. However, the stress of it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as if you gradually earned, not earned, but gradually brought in these two individuals where it was a gradual thing. It was one week you all had a house of five that has now turned into the next week you can now have a house of seven overnight, and with no preparation because it wasn't discussed, so to speak. Like there wasn't a discussion of, if something happens to me by your aunt or your wife's aunt, like if something happens to me, then this is what needs to take place. Or, hey, I'm sick. We need to start making this gradual transition of my sons to your home. So
Right.
not only was it stressful for you and your family, your wife and your kids, uh, us imagine the stress of what they're going through. My mom was here, my mom is sick, now my mom is gone, now I'm in a house with five people I really don't know. Even though I have my brother, but I don't know these people. I know them as far as them coming around to family gatherings and coming around, but I really don't know them.
Yeah.
So that adjustment period for you all and them. So that leads me to my next about transitioning and how like the unliving feels uncomfortable, and like how our brains really dislike feeling powerless.
Mm.
Okay.
That's
So
good what you said.
right. So that's it's a powerful insight how transitions and loss can make you feel uncomfortable, and that your brain feels powerless. So with that, it's like, let's talk about being out of control or feeling like you're out of control when it comes to a loss of life of a loved one.
Yeah. I think in that situation, out of control part is especially like with spouses. Like I've never had a spouse pass away, but I've had people who had spouses pass away. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just you you have your own thing, like no marriage is 50-50. And so when the person that's doing the 70-80 goes,
Mm.
and then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that they were doing so much. You start realizing like, where's that bank account? Like, it's like where's this bank actually at? Where are these numbers at? These account numbers. And you're like, oh my goodness, I was so detached from the the reality of accomplishing these things.
Right.
And especially for people who have businesses, like,
Mm.
and the other spouse wasn't involved in the business. It's
Mm.
just like, this is why people scoop up businesses because, or properties, because one person was doing 90, 80, 70%. The other person was sitting back like, whoo, it is nice going on this vacation every 3 months,
Mm.
and I'm not talking sexually wise, you know what I mean? It could be
Right.
anything. The woman could be, you know what I mean, more cases or not. She's handling her business, and the dude's just sitting back like, I'm just gonna run through life and fix cars, and she want a honey-do list. I'll just do it because my girl is taking care of everything. But in any situation, the reality of it is, if you're not involved, and then that person has a tragic going on,
Yes.
oh, buddy, you gonna feel like you don't have no control. But then all the people is coming out the woodworks like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? How much you want for this? How much you want? It's like,
Mm,
can I
that
breathe?
is, yes, and that is that. You know what? So what popped into my mind while you were talking, housewives. Okay, housewives that do not participate with their husbands or spouse or housewife and wife, husband, whatever it is, the combination is the stay-at-home spouse. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, politically correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
The stay-at-home spouse. Okay.
yeah,
So with the stay-at-home spouse that is not involved in money making decisions, that is not involved when it comes to paying bills, and they don't see, like you said, they don't know the bank accounts, they have no idea what any information is,
the
and then
budget.
all of a sudden, the budget, they don't know what the house business is. Let's put it that way, the house business. Okay, when it comes to managing the house, yes, they might be managing the home when it comes to taking care of the children and other things, but when it comes to the home business, the financial business, they have no clue. So when that other spouse transitions, and now they have to pick up where that individual left off. You're talking about feelings of loss and frustration and the lack of stability. And then do not allow something not to be right, okay, with the finances. And now you have to figure it out. Or you have to figure out, or that spouse was not involved in the business, and now
Mm,
you have to step up
yeah.
and run that business or handle the business.
Woo.
That
Tell
is
you. Yeah.
that.
Let's
And
talk about. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so and that brings up a memory of when I worked in Wilmington, North Carolina um, for the New Hanover County Department of Aging, right? And I remember one of my volunteers coming in, and his wife had not even transitioned. It was just as simple. She was a stay-at-home spouse. He worked. She asked him for some extra money for something, and he made a comment back to her, and he said his wife just they didn't argue. He said he had made a comment back. His wife kindly went and got the checkbook because she handled the checkbook and the paying of the bills and things like that. So he said she went and got the checkbook and handed him the checkbook and said, well, you do it from now on. That man said he sat there for about the next couple of weeks trying to figure out how to pay the bills and how she bounced the checkbook. And he said he couldn't do it. He nicely gave it back to her and said, it's yours. Okay. Now, can you imagine if he was just that frustrated and she was still living, and the fact that he was not able to keep up with the house finances? Now he brought the money in, he put the money in the bank, she wrote the checks and paid all the bills, but he could not do it. and she was still here. He nicely handed the checkbook back over to her. So could you imagine what would have happened had she transitioned first?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about that whole situation at the other end of the spectrum. It's like, yeah, you make the money, but then she's the housewife, and then
House
you got
spouse.
little people, house spouse. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, politically correct. Yeah, yeah. So
House
now
spouse.
you got little people, and I'm about that making that bread, that cheese and stuff, bringing home the bacon, but then you don't participate in the kid's life, and then you get that phone call, and you come home to these little people with their eyes like gigantic, looking at you like, what now? So now you got to be an emotional support. You got to get those kids ready at some point to go back to school,
Yes.
but you don't know how to do laundry yourself.
Yes.
You don't know what kind of food they like.
Yeah.
Imagine that stress. Excuse me. You know what I mean? You don't know
Yeah.
where their clothes are. You don't know what type of shoes they wear. Like, you know what I mean? Their favorite colors. It's like, that's a lot. That's a
You have to
lot.
learn
This
your
is,
children.
and
They have to learn their
then the
children.
maturity of them is not there to understand that you going through something. You know, little people are selfish. I was just talking to my wife about this other day. It's like we
Mhm.
gotta accept. I believe there's knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and I know they purposely left out acceptance. And this is why. Because my first son, I used to do this to my cousin. We got a lot of cousins, y'all. We got a lot of cousins.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
A lot of uncles who just, you know, they what is they called? They procreated. Yeah. So it's like, and so I used to do this to my cousins all the time. Like they be drinking a bottle, and I go to the other end of it and pretend I'm drinking. And the kid's face is like all in, you know, joy and everything. Sucking on their bottle. And they notice that you sucking on the other end, and they're like, what the? You know, they move the bottle away. And you looking at them like, no, let me get some. And it made me realize that and accept that all babies are inherently selfish. You got a baby that is probably like 8 months old drinking his own bottle. 1 year, I forgot when they start drinking their own bottle.
Right.
Literally are taking the bottle away. Like, no, you can't have none. It's the acceptance of that. That these kids, we have to teach them to be empathetic. We have to teach them to share. You know, but in that same situation, we also have to understand that their brains are completely different. I had two old couples tell me this when I was selling cars. They said, you have to accept that you are an adult, but your children have to go through pre-adolescent, like the infant stage, move to that adolescent stage mentally, and then move to adulthood. Excuse me. You shouldn't treat your children like adults when they're in the infancy stage. You can start training them or teaching them like that when they're in the adolescence. And then, of course, they become adults when they start to realize all that stuff that you would tell them. You know, when you get to that point in your life, you're like, oh, that's why mom said, that's why grandma said that.
Right,
you know,
right,
uncle,
right.
dad, or whatever like that. It's like that's when you transition into the mindset. But until that point, you don't get there. So now going back to the original topic, now you coming home, your spouse has passed on. You got these little people there who are in infancy stage, whatever age group they're in.
Right.
And then you got to relate to them at that level at the same time trying to figure out what is it my next step. And that's big. It's like, and you don't have like prep time. You know, like comic book fans say that, you know, they understand this thing I'm about to say. Like Batman say he can defeat anybody as long as he has preparation. You ain't got no preparation.
There is no prep. There is none. Zero.
You thrown into it's like you thrown into the water. You thrown into the fire. Like you thrown into the water. You just trying to keep your head above water so you can, you know, tread water so you can breathe a little bit. Forget about swimming.
Right. Right.
That's a deep, and it like I hope people who are married actually listen to this and think about this, because you think it's stressful on you. Imagine a child,
yes,
who's done everything with one parent majority of the time, but hasn't done something. Now it's like your child is literally left with not a stranger, but they know you as the other
Other
half,
parent.
yeah,
Right.
other parent.
Right.
But the knowledge of them
Mm-hmm.
and the cohesiveness, it might not be there, and so you're literally going to have to learn each other, even if you do have that connection.
Right.
Because it is trauma,
Mm.
it's going to have to be relearned because this is that unexplained, unidentified
Mm-hmm.
criteria that's now been put into your life,
Right. And
and you
that's
have
been
to expect that
mhm.
friction.
Right. So right, and with being and with that and that being out of control, it's like the brain does not like it at all. So and we see this with majority of most losses, whether it's end of life, whether it's divorce, whether it's illness,
Mm.
or even a change in identity, which we're going to talk about that one day. It involves, like I said, some kind of transition, something ends, something shifts, something breaks. And here's what is challenging about that with transitions or losses, especially the ones we don't choose. That's it feels uncontrollable and it's uncomfortable, and our brains do not like it one bit. Okay. And it's like our nervous systems is wired to seek stability, predictability, and control. So when all of that is chaotic, when all of that is chaotic and all of those things are going on, and I don't I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody, anyone who can operate outside of being unpredictable or, you
Spur
know,
of the moment type stuff, you mean?
right. Now we have our moments. We have our moments when we could do spirit of moment, or you have some like, you might hear somebody say, oh, an artist is aloof, or, but you may have your moments where you can operate without stability, but eventually, and it's not going to be very long because eventually you're going to pull it back together because you're going to be like, I can't keep doing this. I cannot. And I think that's one of the things that's like difficult, challenging to the average person about operating without the unknown, operating in the unknown, because we
Yeah.
want to know what's coming next.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we have a way to have a say or some control over what is happening to us. But when someone makes their transition or that chapter closes without warning, we're thrown into a state of powerlessness.
Yeah. It's worse for people who are goal oriented, for
Mm.
people who are, the ones who make to do lists, the ones who,
Mhm.
like to have stuff in order. It's like, I believe, I can't say I believe. Yeah, no, let me go back. I believe that that's what it is because you're so thrown off. That's part of that power control. You're just so thrown off that it's just like, wait a minute,
I,
my plans have been messed up. It's like I
I,
was planning. That's what I was saying in one of the earlier casts. It's like but my mom was like, wait a minute, how can you pass away? Like we had plans. Like I was planning on flying you out here. You know what I mean? Spend time with your,
Mhm.
like no, like you can't just. Well, how could you do this? Like you messed up my script. Like it's so selfish. Again, back to that selfishness. You know
I,
what
look, big I,
I mean? Yeah, I
right
am the
here,
I. Yeah.
right here, right here, right face front. I can definitely tell you that, you know, I like to be in control of me and my life and the decisions I make.
Mm.
That being out of not or that's not having control outside of me. is difficult. Like I don't even, that whole and that that's something that is really something to think about because like there's no fixing it if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And or undoing and no opting out. Okay.
Mm.
And that could be terrifying because at the end of the day, we really do not have any control over how we leave it, not unless you decide you want to unalive yourself. Okay. Which we'll get. That's a whole nother heavy topic. We'll get on
Woo.
today. Um, but we're not just grieving what we've lost. We're like grieving that loss of control.
Mm. Big. That's big. It's facts.
You
It's
know,
facts.
we're grieving that loss of control, and in having a conversation with when I was in North Carolina last weekend. Um, I had the conversation with Pastor Big Sis George, and we were talking about the plans, and I think we talked about that while we were at the car meet. And I had all these plans with Darius, and it was like the rug was just snatched out from under my feet, and I was like, how dare you, how dare you do this to me? We had all these plans. We had, there were things that I was working towards for myself and my sons, and you just snatched the rug right up, right, just yanked the rug right from underneath me. And now I have to pick up the pieces. Like I have to pick it up and keep going. And the challenging part is, like I said before, I'm moving forward. However, Darian does not want any of anything that I'm working towards. He doesn't want it. So that also leads to, like you talking about, the out of control and feeling of powerlessness. And now it's like, okay, well, what do I do with my dreams?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're still mine because yes, they're mine for them, but they were my motivation, right? They were Darius and Darian were my motivation. Darius and Darian were my inspiration. And now that Darius is gone and Darian really doesn't want any, it's like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
That's that powerlessness.
It's like an algebra equation. It's just like you got a couple of the pieces, A plus B equals C, and somebody just snatched B out, and you're like, wait a minute. I had the equation all right, and then it turns into a calculus equation. It's just like,
That's that one plus y equals z2 squared. What's
exactly.
the answer for z2? You like, there's something missing out of this.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, what's going on? And it's like, but you don't get the time. You don't get the time to sit back and ponder. Or if you take the time, next thing you look up, your friend's like, hey, you okay? I've been checking on you. It's been like 2 weeks. You're like, what do you mean it's been like 2 weeks? It was just, and then you check your own, you're like, and then that adds to the confusion because you're like, what was I doing for 2 weeks? It's like how? Like what? Like when? It's like, yo, your spirit gets, what I think it is? I was just thinking about when we were talking, is like, I believe like the body's separate. It's split up in like three different things. You got your spirit, your mental, and then you got your physical. The world tells you that mind over matter, but in reality, it's your spirit controls your mind, which controls your body, right? And so we acknowledge that we're human beings, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and in that, when that loss happens, it's like a piece of our spirit is being torn away because, especially in your situation where it's a child, that's a piece of you, and then and then you as a child, when your parents go, that's still a piece of you because they gave you took a piece of them. You
Right.
gave a piece of you to Darren, and Darius. And then
Mhm.
now it's like using DJ, you're like, oh my goodness, it's like a piece you got that you gave away, you were still attached to it, but
Right.
now it's completely ripped away. It
Mhm.
was like it made a string kind of, you know,
Right.
attached to them. But then
That's
now
cool.
somebody cut that string and then ask permission. And you trying to
Right.
find out who that is. It's like why you separate us? Like what's going on? Well that's just me. I'm sorry. That's not
Well,
everybody.
you're right
That's
though. You're right. You are definitely right because it what takes place and is the figuring out after. And some people get or become obsessed with the figuring it out. I have to figure it out. I have to fix it, or I have to, I have to figure out who I am. I have to figure out what direction I'm going to move in. I have to figure out, and believe it or not, here we are 4 years later. Okay. 4 years later. And I'm still attempting to figure it out. Okay. Uh, and I get frustrated with myself, but however, I know it's going to work out. I just keep, as I say, keep plugging, keep pushing. Um, the other part of that is what our brains don't, or what our brains do, is it's like the replaying of what happened over and over. It's like
mm,
it's looking for someone to blame, or blaming yourself, thinking if I had just said this, or if I had just done that, because we feel powerless, and because our minds are trying to like really create a meaning, even if that meaning hurts. It's like it's not because we're broken. It's not because we're desperate to feel in control again. It's not that. It's like we're just trying to make sense of the whole thing, you know? Um, and sometimes there are things that happen, or certain things that kind of ease the pain, if that
mm,
makes sense. um or help you kind of deal with the pain. So I would say, like, as a parent, and we talked about this before, like when you, like, for your wife, when she lost her aunt, okay, her grieving had to be very quick, because she has 3 children that depend on her, and then you guys picked up 2 more. Okay. So now total of 5 that she has to focus on, to take care of, plus go to work, plus manage the home, plus you guys have to have, your time, it and juggle that, right? Put everything into perspective. So her grieving was brief. She almost had to like cut it off.
yeah.
Okay. She had to cut it off.
She didn't even get a chance to. She's still going through. Like
Right. Right. And only and at times, like, only bits and pieces come out of that. Um I see my cousin Carol Ann, I think she's watching through Facebook, you know. So it is the same for her, with the tragic loss of her son. And my cousin, she's married to my cousin. Um, but with their loss, now, even though it's a tragic loss of their son, there's 2 daughters they still have to love on, even though they're adults. The blessing in their loss was that their son had a baby on the way, and the baby came in the next month.
mm,
So the baby is now a piece of him, right?
they can hold on to.
They can, exactly, exactly. So for them, even though that loss is still there, they have the joy, they're finding joy in the baby. Now, some people get that, some people don't, you know. Um, and I think, and we'll probably get into this. This is another heavy topic, like with these new abortion laws. Okay,
Oh man.
and I don't know if you heard like in the news about the woman who's brain dead, who's on life support, and they found out she's pregnant, and they're keeping her on life support until
The
it's time
baby.
to deliver the baby.
Yeah.
At that point, so yes and no. In a way, yeah, great. The family has something to look forward to, but at the same time, it's still a loss because their daughter is not physically here. And
Exactly. Yeah. The joy portion of it is gone. It's like the joy of the birth of child and mother is never going to be experienced. The
right,
child is never going to have that skin to skin touch, first touch thing, you
right.
know, that you ladies go through. You know,
Hmm.
the
So
yeah,
it's that's a hard one, but we're gonna talk and end up getting to that later. But I'm just saying, just think about the loss. Your daughter is there laying in a coma, and at the time that happened, she was found to be about 6 or 7 weeks pregnant, and now she has, that body has to be taken, um, has to sustain this baby for the next 9 months.
yeah,
Okay. Right.
artificially. Yeah.
Right. So, just think about the overwhelmingness and the anxiousness that that family is going through. They probably feel like they're losing their grip, and the same thing like with my cousin Carolyn, she, and Vashon, um, it's they're not weak. Believe me when I tell you, you're not weak, and how you're handling your grief and what you're doing in your grief is not wrong either, you know. And this whole concept of like a man is not supposed to cry, or a man might be seen as weak if he cries. No,
Yeah. Don't
no,
be. Yeah.
please cry.
Exactly.
Cry your heart out. Cry until you are content. Cry that grief. Get it out. Because if
What's
not,
the point in holding it in? What's the point in holding it in? Like, what's so macho about holding it in? It's a bunch of
right.
nonsense.
So, and if not, you're gonna end up. It's gonna come out in another way, and it may not be nice. It may
Exactly.
not be. It may not be nice. It may turn up in alcohol. It may turn up in drugs. It may turn up in
It's definitely turned
compulsive,
anger.
right? Anger is compulsive behavior. It's going to turn up some kind of way. It's going to show up. That grief is going to show up. So, with that, it's like, you're responding to the most human thing of all, which is the shock of change you did not ask for. Okay. The shock of change that you did not ask for. And that's like you can't control loss. We cannot control loss. But what we can do is you can put a name on that feeling. You know, you can put a name on that. So when grief is overwhelming and it's confusing and it's heavy and it's chaotic, and it's one of the most healing things that you can do is put a name on it. Name what you're feeling. You know, um, yeah, name what you're feeling. Yeah, name what you're feeling. I'm over here on TikTok as well, and it's making me do some things to keep my live going. But yes, put a word to your feeling. Name it. Putting a word to your emotion, it can change everything.
Yeah.
It changed everything. When you're feeling sad, when you're feeling anger, when you're feeling numb, when you're feeling guilt, when you're feeling relief, name it.
Yeah. Like
Name
you
it.
said before too, sometimes if you don't know how to express it, write it down. You'd be
Mhm.
amazed. Like you saying, journaling. You'd be amazed at how things come out like like a fountain. Things
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't even know were in there. Just start writing stuff down. You know, if the anger comes up, you're mad at the person because they left you in this
Right.
situation, or you're upset at the person because
Mm-hmm.
your plans got ruined. Not theirs, your plans got ruined. Like,
Right.
you
Right.
know what I
That
mean?
part.
Yeah, if the confusion portion comes
Mhm.
up, like
Right.
writing stuff down, like it's a release. It's a different kind of release.
It
It's
is.
a good release, you know, because
Right.
you're not going to hurt the pen or the paper. But
No.
when you take a second and you go back and you reread what you wrote, you'll be
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know I was thinking like that, because it just comes out.
Right.
It's like it just comes out of you so naturally that,
Right.
and sometimes in a way, it will waken you up to just how you're dealing with the situation, that you
Mm-hmm.
actually are dealing with the situation, and that you can progress on, because that's the ultimate goal,
It is.
you know.
Yes. Yes. It is. It is. Is
You're
recognizing
still here, they're not, but you are. Take
you're
that
still
as a
present.
blessing.
You're
It's
still
simply
present. You're still
that.
present. Yes. So, and with that being said, definitely look. When you're feeling what you're feeling, recognize it. When you're in that moment of grief, whatever stage you're in, recognize it. Give it a name. Give yourself a break. Be gentle. Um, any closing remarks, Kareem? Cousin Kareem?
No, I just say, just remember. Yeah, I do actually. I say, remember that you are a human being, and you don't fit in. The mold you fit on into is your own.
Mm,
Don't fit into anybody else's. Don't let anybody put you into their mold. Their mold is their individual mold. You know, they give it like chocolate. You ain't gonna, you that big box. You know, we got those individual joints in there. So yeah, don't let anybody try to put you into a different mold. You're gonna be broken up. You
yes.
know, little pieces. Yeah, stay in your own mold. Stay in your
Mm,
own lane.
that's
Yeah.
it. All day long. All day long. And with that, I am going to say thank you for joining us today on this journey through grief, healing, and remembrance. Grief is not something we simply get over, it cannot be fixed. It's something we learn to carry, something that shapes us, and something that teaches us about love and resilience. So, as you move through your own process, remember to be patient with yourself. There's no timeline, no right way, no wrong way to give or way to grieve.
Yeah.
Honor your feelings, embrace the memories, and allow yourself space to heal in your own time.
Yes.
If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to reach out and share your story or let us know how grief has shaped your journey. And if you know someone who might need this conversation, please share this episode with them. We can be reached on all social media. So on Instagram, sometimes we're bougie, sometimes we're hood. The live actually goes through my mimosa, my Queen of Life empowerment though. Facebook, sometimes we bougie, sometimes we're hood. Um, TikTok, sometimes we bougie, sometimes we hood, or SBSH on TikTok. Instagram, SBSH Grief. You can reach out to us there, send us a direct message if you want to come on as a guest or, have any comments or suggestions to topics about grief that you would like for us to talk about. And remember, love doesn't mean carrying the impossible, it means showing up imperfectly again and again because
Yeah.
we're not perfect. So embrace your imperfections. As we say, be perfectly in perfection. Okay. And until next time, be kind to yourself, hold space for your emotions, and remember, you are never alone in this journey. Grief is love with nowhere to go, and you deserve all the care in the world. Take care. And remember, we stream live every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you then.
Enjoy.
It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance.